rather like we're about to fight over Elton John's glass, and Elton John was never here, right?
Well,
so I'm not saying, so it clearly still matters to us. In our misapprehension of our situation, we still really care, and these are objectively true claims about the level of at which we value things, and hence the impasse.
Well,
but it matters
I think that's counterproductive dismissive. Like you could say, well,
it's really not. When you look at the specific claims, it's really not.
Look, you took the contextual interpretation to its absolute extreme. You said, well, there's multiple reasons why different people who occupy the same piece of land are going to feel about it in different ways.
Sure.
Okay, and
most of those reasons are amenable to some kind of rational compromise.
Well,
I mean, there's actually there's studies on this. I mean, there's studies done by people who I disagree with.
When you say the word rational in that context, you're using it as a black box that contains the concept, proper way of thinking about it. It's like it's not so obvious in most situations what the rational approach is.
Well,
otherwise, life would be very,
I have an obvious
simple.
one. I have an obvious one here, and that's that whatever the Christians and the Muslims and the Jews think they're getting from their attachment to their dogmatic and irreconcilable religious worldviews can be gotten just as well by a deeper understanding of our universal and non-culturally bound capacity for ethical experience, spiritual experience, community building, and we can touch that space.
What's that grounded in?
We can touch that space without. Because it's
fine.
almost like the status quo is. It's almost like you're content to live in a world, or at least you're content not to judge too harshly a world where fans of rival soccer teams or baseball teams regularly kill one another over their fandom, right? Like what if that were the status quo? It's like it's been this way for thousands of years. There must be a reason for it. Right?
Look,
people really like sports.
I'm not trying to justify the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
No, but
I'm saying that
we shouldn't be too quick to judge the sanctity of their differences of opinion.
Okay, but wait a minute, Sam. There, you made a claim. Like your claim was that if the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims would just stop their stupidity and adopt this universal ethic, then everything would be okay. It's like, okay, what's the basis for the universal ethic? Like that's such.
That's a non-problem. No one's going in search of that. The truth is, I mean, that's an interesting problem for philosophers and for scientists. That's not actually where the rubber meets the road for people living their lives well. I mean, this is analogous to me.
Sure
like
it is. It's associated in your book with the difference between the bad and the good life.
I really care about all of this, and my job as a philosopher, as a moral philosopher in that case, is to make the best case I can for these ideas. But the truth is, I mean, it is analogous to when you get into a debate with a Christian fundamentalist in the States. Very often, this person will pretend to care about cosmology or evolution as though it's the most important thing in the world, as though you can't get out of bed in the morning and figure out how to treat your friends and family well unless you figure out what happened before the Big Bang, right? No one really lives their lives that way, and yet we have convinced ourselves that this is a sensible way of talking about the conflict between religion and science.
Okay, so this is actually why I asked Sam this question. It wasn't an attack. It's like, okay, so look, people have these belief systems, Christian, Muslim, Jew, we'll say for that, and you're saying abandon those, let's say, and move towards this transcendent rationality. It's like, okay, two problems. It's not so easy to abandon a belief system because you end up in the morally relativist nihilist pit. And that's a problem.
One doesn't have to. And many
people tend to, and so it's a very major problem.
It's just not. I mean,
they don't have to. Look,
wait.
Sam,
that's an empirical claim that we would have to find out whether that's true. But there's a lot of evidence against that.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of evidence for it too, but it's beside the point to some degree because that isn't something that I want to quibble about. Perhaps there are transitional paths, and sometimes people find a collapse of their faith actually freeing. It's certainly the case that many of the people who are happy about what you're doing have found exactly that in what you've been saying, and more power to you. And so I'm not willing to dispute that. But what you said was, okay, here's these belief systems that are ancient and complex, and we can step outside of them, and there's this transcendent rationality that we could all aspire to that would solve the problems. It's like, okay, what is it?
Well,
what is it exactly?
It is, at a minimum, to value all of the variables that conspire to make the one life we know we have
Okay, you
worth
can't
living.
value all those variables.
Well, no, we're doing it right. We do it every day in how we organize
No, we
ourselves
don't,
in
because
society.
we apply an a priori framework to the variables to reduce them to a tiny subset that we can manage. And it's the nature of that a priori framework that we haven't been able to have a discussion about. We have an a priori framework that narrows our perception to almost nothing. It's built into us. It's partly socially constructed. It has a deep neurological substrate. And we actually understand how it emerges to a large degree. And the thing is that...
But I don't think that's actually our difference. I mean, so if you put your hand on a hot stove, you will immediately feel a very good reason, in fact, an unarguably good reason to remove it, right? And it doesn't require moral philosophy to get you there. You don't need to inspect your a priori framework. You just have to feel, holy shit, this is the worst thing I've ever felt, right? And there's so many moments like that in life that we understand sometimes.
What if you're trying to rescue your child from a fire?
Well, exactly. Then you have some other goal, right?
Yes,
that
you
is going
certainly
to
do.
cause you to brave that suffering, right?
Yes.
But again, trying to rescue your child from a fire is pretty close to the hot stove in not needing to be analyzed, right? The imperative to rescue it becomes harder when you have to rescue someone else's child from a fire, and you're worried about orphaning your child who's standing next to you on the sidewalk, right? Then we get into the domain of moral philosophy, and then you can say, well, you know, how much do each of us owe the children of other people, right? How much should I risk my life and risk orphaning my child to rescue your child? That's when things get interesting in a philosophy seminar, and that's where people begin to hesitate. People begin to, we are biased toward protecting ourselves, protecting our kin, protecting our friends, and only then do we begin to extend the circle. And again, but this is not a mystery where we want to go here. We want to extend the circle more and more and build institutions and societies that implement our best selves at our best moments more and more. It makes it more effortless to be good in the world. We want good incentives.
Can we take your example seriously here for a second?
Yeah.
All right, so you are built to be more likely to rescue your own